your transformation. Let's tap into your own authentic genius and live the life you desire.
You are now listening to
Join Dr. Rademaker for an enlightened conversation about our brain intelligence, our body intelligence, and our energy intelligence. And now, here's your host, Dr. Bart Rademaker.
I'm Dr. Bart Rademaker, and this is Prescription for Your Transformation, Real People, Real Conversations, and Real Success. And it's also part transformational art at Burning Man. That's why we have the art piece behind me instead of my usual, because I'm bringing some of that art to us virtually as it's going to happen in Burning Man this year. You know, I have a question, for all the listeners out there. And it's really, about this. And let me just make sure that I am live everywhere else, because last week we had some challenges. Wasn't quite working the way that I wanted it to. And yes, it is. Everything is all set. So let me ask you this question. About 15 years ago, I went to Sri Lanka after the tsunami hit. And there was a very particular reason that I went there. I brought my own humanitarian team. And I posed the question to people, where is our humanity if we cannot find the greatness even in the desperate times? And we are in that desperate time as well. And so the question that we can ask ourselves is that in this pandemic, in this time where our world is turned upside down, whether it's by choice, whether it's by fear, whether it's by perception, whatever that is, how is your life changing by your own reflection about life? Are you taking the time now to reflect what's right in this world and what's not? Are you going to wait again till some sort of crisis happens before you decide that, what, life is precious and I need to have a role in this world? And so that's what today is really all about, is, what is your role in climate change? A lot of activists are out there. They're making a lot of noise. They're challenging the politicians out there. And most of the world is completely ignorant of all of that. And that's not necessarily the optimum solution, because the truth is that with so few people, raising their voices, they're not well being heard by the rest of the world. As a human being living on this planet, being a guest on this planet, in fact, I have a role just like you have a role in participating in protecting our world. What's interesting with this pandemic right now is that the world is actually kind of healing. Why? Because there's less pollution, less going on. Animals are coming back into the neighborhoods. Now you're seeing dolphins and whales where you haven't seen them before. So I'm super excited to be talking to Philip Price. Very jealous about his adventures and his stories and all the places that he goes to, but the magic that he also helps other people experience by taking them on tours in some of the most exotic places. But he also has an important message, and I'm excited to share that with all of you today. Philip, thank you for joining me today.
Great to be here. Thank you for the invite.
No, absolutely, and very blessed to have met you last year somewhere in the middle of the desert, somewhere in the world, and really connected and excited about, what you represent and what you've done. And so what I'd like to do first is tell us a little bit about your background, your stories, your tours that you've been doing for the last 20 years, and how it turned out to come into Sri Lanka as well.
Okay, right on. Well, I'll start at the beginning then. I'm the fourth of four boys, fourth born. And my brothers, all three of them older than me, used to talk much about the earth, and we'd go camping, climbing, exploring. But they were kind of politically minded, and they would talk. And I'm the youngest one, and I wasn't such an articulate talker back then. I'd let them do all the talking. What I discovered is they did more talking, as I got older, than action. Right. So I ended up being one of action, and so my actions speak for me. And my grandmother was an amateur geologist in Arizona, and I used to go with her. She would deliver in her retirement. She would deliver muffins and mail to these hermit miners in the middle of Arizona. My grandmother had a 4-wheel drive truck. Grandma had a 4-wheel drive. And I'd go with her as a little 5-6-year-old and was amazed by her lifestyle and her adventurous spirit. So that definitely was a lot of what I became as an adventurer myself and loving the desert. So I became a boat guide in the Grand Canyon. I did boutique custom tours. I'm a conservation geologist and professional geologist. My grandma was a amateur one, but I was a professional geologist. And I was sought after because I was a conservationist, and I knew I was an interpretive geologist, so I could read the Grand Canyon like a book, and out back to 2 billion years of age, of age of the Earth. And I was so fascinated by the Grand Canyon. So this filmmaker came in, and he heard about me, and he wanted me to help him guide his film crew down the Grand Canyon to create a film. We did 3 Grand Canyon trips, 25 days each, 16 people. Each trip over 3 years, made a great film. And it was so cool because I was able to guide his film to deliver a conservation message. I'd been a member of the Grand Canyon Trust, an advocate for the Grand Canyon for quite a while up to that point. This is 25 years ago, 25 years ago. We made for change in the Grand Canyon. The overflight corridors were narrowed, so only 5 overflight corridors, so natural quiet was returned to the Grand Canyon. The water flow regime in the Colorado River changed. It was the minimum, maximum. The flow regime was within a tolerance is great, because I'd wake up in the morning and your raft would be high and dry because they needed power in Las Vegas. So they would just whatever, and so we were dictating how our water level was, what they needed in Las Vegas. Anyway, so I battled that as a conservationist. So out of being in the Grand Canyon as a guide, getting involved in filmmaking, seeing the power of film, this film producer and I became best friends. Up until now, we're great friends, and I still do films with him. So he said after the Grand Canyon film was done, he said, "Philip, I want to do a film in Sri Lanka, and then after that, India. Do you want to come?" And I said, "Yeah, I want to help."
Of course.
So all these years, I've bent his ear to most of his films. Prolific filmmaker out of Sweden. Prolific, and he's won a lot of awards. He hosts film festivals in Europe. He's so well known. So, but I've bent his ear to sending out conservation messages, and so that's a great a great means to effect change. And so that's why I do documentary films, do social media, video blogs, and that's one of the most powerful tools we have as a conservation group.
It's interesting, you talk about, conservation, and, I've been fortunate. I grew up in 5 different countries, and one of my favorite countries was Mexico, and was part of the Boy Scouts, and, was always going on venture trails and trips and everything else. And, it was always a great feeling where you respected the land, you respected nature, you respected animals, and it was always a great feeling inside of you when you did that. And the truth is that I think, we're wired, to actually connect with nature. And when we disrespect it, somewhere inside of us, I think, people must not feel that great. And so it's innate within us to conserve this planet, and, we just can't ignore it. And so I appreciate, your activism in that way, and I'm sure it's been pretty challenging for you to fight against, or to, challenge, if you will, these big corporations and these politicians. It cannot have been a very easy thing. Not that we're going to talk politics today, but, thank you for doing that work for us.
Well, yeah, I appreciate your appreciation. The thing about about politics, for one, I learned early on. In later, maybe in the early '90s, I lived in Seattle area and was appointed by the governor and council members and others to represent conservation side. And so, sometimes as a geologist, I was working with the USGS as their appointed civilian on some committees to draw up new rules on groundwater quality, groundwater quantity, and wetlands, and what I discovered, I was like a political appointee, the findings we come up with as advisors to the politicians and for these committees, the findings would only last as long as the current politicians were in office,
Right.
and then they'd be lost. And I found that for all the effort, sometimes years of effort, sometimes like 3 and 4 years, it'd be lost. It would be just forgotten, so to me, as a conservationist, like back early on, I fumbled through to find where I could have the greatest impact, and through politics was not the answer. It was so frustrating when a new administration would come in and all the work we did was tossed out the window. So I discovered that by changing the attitudes of people, so to influence people's opinions and to show them nature and to show them things that are worthy of protection, and to actually guide them to places and bring them, and politicians, influential people. Now it would be social media influencers, or often I call them event makers.
Right.
Now these days, so many festivals out there and so many different group gatherings and different tribes of people kind of in different areas in different regions of the U.S. So these are like event makers. So I try to influence them and they influence others. And so that has lasting power. So to me, politics is very frustrating. When I get engaged in a political discussion online right now, there's 320 million pandemic experts right now in America. 320 million. So I don't want to enter into that conversation. As you know, I'm an elephant conservationist, Asian elephant conservationist, and I fall back to say all I want to do is save elephants. I don't want to solve the pandemic necessarily. I just want to save ultimately elephants. There's all these experts out there, and they're all engaged in political discussions or their opinions or whatever, and a lot of conspiracy theories as we see, and oh my goodness, they can just draw all your attention. And what people don't understand is it's not long lasting. It's their opinion about that matter will only last like 2 or 3 days, and then we move on. You will be proven or disproven, whatever it is.
Right.
And then it's like, what was that effort? The energy is just drained. And so I learned that early on to not be drawn into these political discussions. So I'm drawn into I'm a geologist, so I see things long term. And I'm also I study Buddhism and Hinduism and different of the old classic religions, and I love the stories. I love the lineage. I love the looking at things on a long term, like a geologist would. So I look at the Earth through billions of years. I look at culture through thousands of years.
Right.
And you think about then what does that compare to politics? Which has a shelf life of like 2 hours.
Right.
And then so if I can make a change in our culture, I believe, and I want to put my effort into that lineage, whatever that is. Lineage to me is right now is knowing the tools of social influencing through social media, using that. So we have over about a quarter million followers right now on social media on my own group's page. That has a lot more influence, and so I can guide people into the stories that I want to share. These are long lasting, and of course, documentary films and video blogs. We have Asian elephant TV.
I think you got something there, because I think one of the things that I experience, and me being in the medical world and in the cognitive behavioral coaching world, if you will, is I think people are just so disconnected, not just from themselves, but from nature, from basic principles, or like I also like to use this word, first principles. And when you talk about the history of the time that things have evolved over thousands of years, billions of years, the Grand Canyon and everything else, I think when we can reconnect with that truism that things have evolved over thousands of years, and it's been a very natural process, and through those thousands and millions of years, guess what? We are now here. So whatever happened before us has allowed us to be here today. And so we have to kind of begin to think, well, what about tomorrow? What about in 100 years, 200 years, 2,000 years? And so in a way, we've got this opportunity because we've got the intelligence, we've got the wherewithal And the last freedom of man is to be able to choose your own attitude towards life. And so we're going to want to choose a new attitude as to, what are we leaving behind? And you were talking earlier, how species are being extinguished and how climate change is real. And people will tell you, and then I've used this argument too, by the way, it says, well, that's happened, billions of years ago too. So what's different now? Well, now we can do something about it. Now we're contributing to it. And I think it's so key that we begin to take some responsibility. And so my question for you then is, so with your filmmaking, do you feel that you're pretty effective in getting people to reconnect with our lineage and then what we need to be doing?
Right. Yeah. So culture, it's so important for people in like Sri Lanka where I work is to remind them sometimes of who they are as a people and what makes them unique. And that's I think why I don't necessarily like the idea of a global civilization or where we're all become globalized. Every region has a culture that's grown for a certain way for a certain reason, like in Sri Lanka. So in saving species there and elsewhere, and I go for elephants as for a reason. They're a keystone species. You save elephant species, you save thousands of species under them because they're a keynote or a keystone species. And so to me, it's one-stop shopping almost, right? Besides the fact that I have a innate, bond with them. I have an intuitive nature with them because I spent so much time with them going back 22 years now. But anyway, in Sri Lanka, as an example, and you can find this also in cultures in South America, in Africa, many different places. So the people who live local developed in the way they did for a reason. Their spirituality revolves often around nature and their interactions between the different tribes in the area. All these things are built over thousands of years, many millennia, right? And what's happening, I think now is okay. So there's a disconnect now. The younger generation are in Sri Lanka. They have this best cell phone service in like these countries. I mean, they had better cell phone service there before we had it in America. I go there and have better cell phone service, because they leapfrogged kind of. They don't have landlines. It's too expensive. They didn't install wires everywhere. But then, like we have in America, right? AT&T strung out across America a long time ago, right? They didn't really even want cell service because they have lines everywhere. But in like India and these developing countries, they leapfrogged. They went right into having cell towers and cell service. So when I'd be there, anyway, so everybody wants to have technology there, and they're so into it. And the more they go for this other, technology part, they lose track. They lose themselves and who they are as a people. And so it's like people like me from outside have to come there and remind them, what's so cool about Sri Lanka is because your landscape is extraordinary. You have animals that we don't see anywhere else. You have endemic species that are phenomenal. You live with nature. Remember that, right? So we make more films, video blogs in Sri Lanka than any Sri Lankan does. Like we have 150 short films about different aspects of nature and mostly elephants there. You talk to locals, like people that are older in Sri Lanka, and they long for the appreciation for people to appreciate what they have, in Sri Lanka. And like they're building dams in Sri Lanka now, and they're doing trans-mountain diversions, from one watershed, sending the water to a different watershed, totally out of the watershed. And the elephants and wildlife and everybody lives in that watershed. Like, what happened to the water? Well, technology that came in with Chinese money and Chinese know-how and diverted whole water regimes, And so, and then the old timers there will say, the way that we used to manage water in the old days, being 2,000 to 3,000 years ago, was they would dug canals that would contour around mountains. And so by the time you'd have these you have 25,000, actually you had 45,000 small water tanks in Sri Lanka, built by all these kings and little local, leaders. They'd build these tanks and they'd store the water, and then they'd have paddy fields down gradient, for growing paddy and for other vegetables, whatever. But they'd have these canals that run off these tanks, these reservoirs, and the canals would deliver the water to some place like 5-10 miles away. sometimes the canals would have more water in them by the end than they had at the beginning, because they were smart. They built the canal so they would pick up the little rivulets of water that come down the little ravines all the way to the final destination. And it was just smart. Now they capture all the water and put it in a pipe and send it somewhere, and the old time locals are like, they've forgotten how to manage water. We knew how to manage water 2,000 years ago better than now. So these are the kind of, like, we'll do films about that. We'll remind them of who they are as a people and what makes them unique. And they developed technology 2,000 years ago that could, pump water uphill, which is unheard of back then. It's like, wow, that's really cool. Anyway, these are the bits that we do, and also in India as well. We do some films in Burma and Sumatra, throughout Asia, and a lot of it is reminding them who they are. Thus, they'll put greater value on their unique culture and be proud of it. I go there as an American, and I love your culture. Our American culture is like, it revolves around plastic, whatever. I mean, I'm proud to be an American, but sometimes more than other times. but I'm so in awe, and I want these people to remember who they are, and they're more likely to protect the species that defines who they are. In Sri Lanka and India, it's so much the elephant.
It's interesting you say that, because I love traveling. I love going to different countries, and I've been to Peru, Ecuador, Sri Lanka, and it's a beautiful experience to see humanity in a different way, and as you said, just evolve based on the geography that's there. And what I found amazing, when I went to Sri Lanka after the tsunami, I got there about 3 months, after it actually hit, and doing some medical work and all that kind of stuff, and experienced all the devastation. But what I really noticed is that life was back to normal. I mean, people were just picked up and did the work and did what they had to do. They weren't just victims anymore. And so it made me appreciate that in countries like this, where they have actually so much less, there seems to be so much more resilience and fulfillment in life than anything else. And it really opened my eyes. But one thing that I loved when I went there were the elephants, and they're incredible animals. And so share with us a little bit your experience with these beautiful beings, and I never realized that they were these keystone beings. I never knew that.
Right. Yeah. So elephants ranged all over the world at one point, the pachyderms. So we had woolly mammoth. We had, here in where I'm at right now in Oregon, and a lot of the landscape is shaped by them worldwide. People don't know their impact, literally, on landscape. So like even here in North America, I tell people, I share with them, like the tundra and the permafrost didn't even exist back beyond 8,000-9,000 years ago. There's no permafrost. Like in Alaska, the ground wasn't frozen. The tundra wasn't there. It's like, well, what do you mean it wasn't there? It came off the ice age and all that. There was ice, and it's like, no, ice age ended like 15,000 years ago. The elephants, the pachyderms, were here until 7,000 years ago on Rangel Island, and they grazed the north countries in the taiga of Siberia. I spent some time in Siberia also, and up in Alaska as well. I spent a lot of time, and it's similar. The permafrost, the elephants, back the historical elephants, the woolly mammoth, grazed everywhere and kept everything down to the nub, so that in the summertime, there was no shading, so the sun would come down right onto the earth and keep it warm. So every summer, the landscape would thaw out, and so there was no ice. When the woolly mammoth went extinct, shrubs started growing. There's shading, and ice would form every year. It pile up, and tundra and permafrost began. So massive areas of North America and of Siberia now are shaped by the lack of elephants. Wow. It's just really a mind-boggler for a lot of people. And so people don't know elephants now in Asia. elephants spread seed. Okay, so I'll back up. I want to say a little more because about North America. When I look out even now, I see hillsides from where I'm at in Central Oregon. Ice came all the way down to near to here. And elephants ranged all around here in Pachyderm. The Ice Age left that around all these terminal moraines and medial moraine, all this manual deposits. And it was like sterile dirt, right? Granular. Elephants compacted it. They spread seeds everywhere. And it basically softened the sharp edge of all the landscape. The morainal deposits were spread out everywhere. They're seeded by the woolly mammoth. Woolly mammoth is shit. So when you walk around much of North America, all the way across to upstate New York and down in New York, actually, everywhere across the north, what you're looking at was shaped by elephants. Wow. It's like, wow, isn't that something? They discovered a whole skeleton of a woolly mammoth in Aspen, Colorado, just recently. And it's like, how old is this one? It's like, I don't know, it's like 8,000 years old or something. I mean, they ranged there until then. Okay, so what's happening now in Asia? The elephants are so dominant in the landscape. I mean, they keep open pathways everywhere. They seed all over the place. It's incredible. You can't get into any of the jungles if elephants weren't there. You can't get in, and a lot of the wildlife can't either. It's a barrier. The shrubs, the spiny bushes, and thorny bushes, and all animals don't go in there. And then there's invasive species now that are coming up everywhere too, which shouldn't be there. No local animal eats. Elephants keep all that down. They spread the native seed everywhere. So they're essential. Anywhere that they're not, the landscape is different than it was forever, for tens of thousands of years. So wow. in that sense, yeah, they're totally essential. So anyway, that's my perspective when I look at landscapes. Often I look at it from as a conservation geologist. I look at things why they're the way they are. There's a story. I look at the Grand Canyon. The woolly mammoth was not in the Grand Canyon. We weren't there, but I'll still look at rock structures, and they all tell stories. In the north climates here in North America and South America is similar, actually, too. They had pachyderm also. But in the north, I look at the landscape with a geologist's eye and look at it long term, and it's phenomenal. So now I look in Asia, it's like, you people, what it'd be like to not to have the elephant? Oh my God, you don't want to know that.
Yeah, what a cool thing. I just imagine you just look, climbing around, walking around nature, and then understanding how this all evolved. I mean, that must be one of the neatest things, to be so connected with, Earth and where we come from. I have a quick question, because why did the woolly mammoth go extinct? I mean, do you know?
Yeah, no, it was human caused. It is almost for sure that they were hunted to extinction. That's pretty much the common thought about it. It wasn't climate change really. It was a little bit of climate pressure on them, but what really put them, I think, pushed them to their demise were the Native Americans here.
Kind of sort of the same thing that's been happening with whales, right?
Right.
What the situation with that is, but I mean, man has hunted them like crazy. Share a little bit more about your experience with your work in Sri Lanka. Twofold. One, helping with the elephants and protecting them, but also all your tours. I know that you've got these amazing tours, and you also co-created an incredible movie about touring in Sri Lanka and these little tuk-tuks. Right. Yeah, that's a new series that's coming out that my producer friend that I collaborate with often, that he's putting out. This is really fun. So the conservation work we do, how we fund our work is often through leading conservation tours. So people come, they say, well, how can I volunteer to help save elephants? And it's like, well, whatever. I first discover what their career is, what their talents are, what their passions are, and then try to fit it into what we have going on. So in some years, I'll have up to 10 different conservation tours, maybe 3 or 4 in Sri Lanka, a couple in India,
maybe Sumatra, elsewhere. And I'll try to plug in people's interest with each one of them. And so, as an example, it can go hand in hand. So, sometimes like there's a chiropractor, Ayurvedic doctor, a chiropractor, that wanted to come recently, osteopath this last year, wanted to be involved. We have these people with medical skills. It's like, well, like acupuncturists. I can do acupuncture to elephants. Well, you can't get close enough to do acupuncture to a wild elephant, but I do have friends that own sanctuaries, and some elderly elephants can maybe use your help. So, I actually facilitated some of these connections, right? But okay, so to back up a little bit, this last year, I had friends, medical doctors, or healers that wanted to be involved, and it's like, so we can incorporate you. So we go to the front lines and do work. We do videos. We maintain presence in many parts of. I'll use this example as Sri Lanka. Every year we go to and view the same herds to survey, to summarize their health. See the newborns for the year, see what their risks are to the herds. Their health. And we have our own private trackers that we call upon always to work with us and to maintain presence in these communities. So for many years we've gone to the same villages. We've worked with the same farmers that are often challenged by elephant raiding. Elephants come and raid their crops in the night, so the villagers have to stay up all night long to protect their fields. So we go there and we interview these people, see what we can do for them. We sometimes provide them tools to help scare away elephants, as an example. But often we feel like, okay, so there's two parts to the equation. It's a human-elephant conflict. Most people think about the elephant side, right? So we go there and we do many things to protect the elephant. We do videos about the elephant, the complications of being an elephant in today's world. I don't know that I want to be an elephant these days, So we want to help them however we can. But we forget that there are people that are trying to coexist with elephants that need support also. So this last year, when I had these healers wanted to be involved, and I'm connected to the yoga communities. There's a lot of healers in the yoga communities, and a lot of them come on tours with us. So they come, and we started this humanitarian project. So humanitarian project is where we go to the same villages and work with the same farmers, same rangers, government rangers we work with that are DART medicating sick wild elephants. We work with rangers. We work with wildlife veterinarians. A lot of them don't have medical attention. A lot of guys, have bad backs, they have bad legs. A lot of villagers and farmers, they can't afford going to the big city to have see a doctor. So we decided, and I've done this before a few years ago. This year we really emphasized it, the humanitarian project. So we bring people with us on these tours. They view elephants at nighttime and in the morning, and when the elephant herds are moving. And we have our trackers who will go out and do our work. But by daytime, they'll be of service to the local villagers. So they'll do osteopathic work. They'll put them on a massage table or whatever, and serve them. The villagers remember that, and they know us quite well, a lot of them already. But our circle of influence in these areas is growing ever more. The recognition of our organization is when they see that we love them. We want to help them. When we help them, they'll more likely help the elephant. So we make these events, these healthcare events, and people will come and be serviced by us. And then we'll put up postings, information about elephants, how to coexist with elephants. We work with the local, a lot of my yoga friends especially, they're fascinated by the Sri Lankan Buddhist culture. And so I've known the most venerable monks in all of Sri Lanka for many years, going back 20-something years. And we'll often go and we'll meditate in these places. We'll go and visit with these venerable monks. So we've created also, as part of the humanitarian project, where people come, our volunteers will come, and they'll go and get blessings from the monks. We'll go and spend time in these very sacred temples. These are 2,000-year-old temples. Buddhism in Sri Lanka is as old as anywhere in the world. It's amazing. So we'll create events. We call it the karmic cleansing or the karmic reset. And these venerable monks and nuns love it. So we created this program this last year, and we're bringing life back into these temples. We did 3 or 4 last year, And so we create these weekend-long events, and hundreds of people will show up. We feed them. We provide for people. A daughter will bring her grandmother or whatever to us and say, "Oh, she's got a bad back. She's got this problem for many years or whatever. Can you help?" We'll bring her to a little facility we set up, and we'll pay attention to her. And they all go. They think we're amazing, so we help them so much. So we endear ourselves to the locals at these events. We do karmic cleansing. The objective there is that people feel guilty in Sri Lanka. A lot of the farmers and villagers that are in conflict with elephants, they can feel conflicted themselves. They know how sacred the elephant is. They honor the elephant, yet they have to protect their crops, their paddy field, because in the evenings, elephants will sneak in and try to eat it. So they're scaring them away with firecrackers. They'll sometimes shoot at them even, but they feel bad. I've known them, so many of them for so many years. So when we do a karmic cleansing, it's a way of resetting, saying, okay, come. It's like it's like a confessional in Christianity or whatever. People will come, and these Buddhist nuns and monks will do these hours-long chants and blessings, and to cleanse the people, so they can kind of it's like Etch-a-Sketch or whatever, like shake it all free and start over. And so they get a fresh start, right? And that's the intent of our friends. We have many monk and nun friends there, and they love it. We brought life back into the temples. More people are paying attention, coming there. So this is an area where we're expanding quite a bit, and it's making great. We're endearing ourselves to locals, and thus they are paying more attention, feeling that they matter, because a lot of them, they don't feel like they matter anywhere, right? And we say, no, you do. We love them, we really do. I mean, some of them I've known for years. I've seen their kids grow up, So anyway, we're providing services to them, and we're trying to educate them. We have an immense amount of information we put out on these big banners and posters about how to live with elephants. And so that's a program that it's like Doctors Without Borders, which sounds like you've been involved in that type of activity. So it's like that, it's similar to that. So we're bringing these, and osteopaths, chiropractors, it's all external medicine, it's not like you have to prescribe anything. Right. So it's not something that Ayurvedic medicine also is similar. So this is the kind of services we offer. So people come with us from the West. They actually pay to participate, so that helps to defray our costs. And that's about half of our income comes from, and half of our support comes from people paying their own way to come and do these kind of services. And other tours we do as well. We do filmmaking tours, we do wildlife biology tours, photography tours, videography tours, all different types. Odissi dance tours. Odissi dancers want to come to Bhubaneswar up in northeast India. There are a lot of elephants up there, so they come to the origin of classic Indian dance, and they learn about that by day, and then go see elephants at night, and work with us and help offset some of our expenses. Anyway, that's
I want to go there right now. So how do people find you? I mean, this sounds absolutely wonderful. And tell me first how people find you, and then I have another really awesome question.
So what's the question again? I'm sorry.
So how do people find you? How do people sign up for these kinds of tours?
Okay. Yeah, so elephantsnow.org. So we're on Facebook. We're elephantsnow.org, the Ganesh Project, and on Instagram, the Ganesh Project. And then we have our website, Elephants Now, like democracy now. But anyway, so elephantsnow.org. And then also I have a personal. I still own a company, Geo Wandering Tours, which is not. It's been a nonprofit for a long time. Elephants Now is a nonprofit, has been for years. Geo Wandering Tours, I led tours all around the world for going back 20 something years. I still have that website up, so people can go to Geo Wandering Tours and see a lot of the tours we do. I still use that as a frequently asked questions page, because the tours are still, the archival page there you can go to and see the kind of tours we've done in the past. When I had that company really operating, all my profits I found were going to save elephants. And so my Dharma teacher, my incredible, my guru, she said, I told her, I said, all my profits are going to elephants. I should just disband geo-wandering tours and just do elephants full time. I said, that's a great idea, Philip. I said, because it's silly, why have a commercial company when, whatever, might as well make it a nonprofit.
Right.
And so we did. But I still have geo-wandering tours. So you can still find that page, a website.
I'm in the world of transformation, and being a plastic surgeon, coach, and energy healer, I'm all about, helping people transform. But I have to say this, that one of the most beautiful ways for personal transformation is actually going on tours like yours. And I've done a whole number of them myself. And it's interesting how you face a new reality and you discover who you really are in those moments. And so I'm sure you see a lot of amazing transformations. What do people tell you after they've gone on these tours?
Yeah, so that's very astute. I think it's a great comment because people do transform. If people have never been to India anyway, by the time you go and spend any time in India, you're going to be transformed regardless, But it's best to have a good guide really to lead you through all that. There's a lot of pitfalls if you go to India, perhaps. So, when they have a purpose to go to these countries, it's so much better, I think, instead of just kind of wandering in and saying, I want to go to ashram. I think I kind of know what I want, but I don't know. Okay, so as a guide, it's been my purpose for 25 years, is to guide people in these surreal landscapes, whether it be Grand Canyon rafting trip, up to a 25-day trip in the Grand Canyon. By the time when you put in a Lee's Ferry at the top of the river, you have no idea what's going to happen. 25 days later, when you come off, you're going to be a changed person. I always tell people, I guarantee you will be. And so let me be your guide. So I'll guide them through the Grand Canyon. And I don't do these trips anymore, but I'm using it as an example because that's what I do also in India and Sri Lanka. I'll guide them through the whole experience. And every day, in the Grand Canyon, every day, it's amazing how it's laid out. It's a roller coaster ride, the Grand Canyon, where every day people will say, this is the most awesome day I've ever had in my life. And that's only day one. Day two, they say the same thing. Day three, the same thing. This is an even better day than yesterday. Every day, it's more profound. And the Grand Canyon's laid out uniquely that way. But in Sri Lanka and India, when we do our tours, they come out of it and say, this is just, it's changed my life, changed my perspective. I have a core group of volunteers that many of them come repeatedly, and others have come only one time because they only get off that amount of time. A lot of them they have a bucket list. They want to do Sri Lanka once, India once, Sumatra once, and then they move on. But a lot of people just love elephants, so repeatedly come, right? And they'll always have a different experience every time anyway, because the challenges in Sri Lanka are different. Every time we're dealing with new issues around elephants. We watch how the herds are doing in certain areas. There's always new challenges every year. I won't go into it, but oh my God, there are so many new challenges for these poor elephants. And we're always right in the front lines discovering what these things are. So when people come with us, for one, they know we create a platform for them to go to the front lines. There's no fooling around. You read about it in the papers and magazines, or see even the documentary or whatever about elephants. Often what you read is often years old, and people have written them. I know a lot of them. The writer, the authors. I know where they've gone, what they're experiencing.
Right.
Often it's removed stuff from the front lines. It's not pertinent right now. And also when people come on our tours, they right in the front lines. And when we go and visit these elephant herds that are on the brink of extinction, people feel like they have a grasp of the issues. They have a grasp of a cause that's dear to their heart, that's pertinent to the whole world, right? The extinction of a subspecies. The Sri Lankan elephant is a subspecies of the Asian elephant. The Sri Lankan subspecies is more beautiful. They're more, I think, and they're more intelligent. Like Ringling brothers and others want always own Sri Lankan elephants. There's something about them, the most evolved of all the elephants. So you want to protect them, So when people come with us, then it's like, wow, I'm right there. All of a sudden, Philip, you put me right at the front lines. I can actually have a voice now and know what I'm talking about, because every time we go out like on a 20-day tour, we do like 6 or 7 days straight. Then we go surfing for a day or two somewhere, and then go back out in the field, and then come back and relax, retreat center, and then go back in the field. People will post video blogs themselves or write on their social media accounts what they're going through. And when we're going into the field, then each day, it'll take us 2, 3, 4 hours to get to some location. And I'll tell them the backstory, why we're going to these places, what the history is to these elephants, to the village, in Sri Lanka. So the people become an expert on that topic for that day. Right. Nobody else in the world will know the more pertinent information than those people in the van or in the Jeep going to that location than the people who come on a tour. Because I'm there, constantly. This is my whole career, right? And they'll write stories about it. And they feel like it really matters, what they're saying. They feel like they're really connecting to front lines environmental conservation issue, and they are. So that's life-changing for people. You can fumble, like I even fumbled around for years trying to find my footing as a conservationist, where I can make the greatest impact. And I tried, through politics, like I told the stories, I was frustrated. All this time wasted, all the time, and so that's how I found myself where I'm at now. So I know I'm very influential in the management of elephants in Sri Lanka, personally, and then some of my core friends that are also conservationists, there's only a couple other conservationists that really make a difference in all of Sri Lanka. And I know I'm one of a handful only, that really matter, that I'm called to the politician's office to talk to them about, okay, what do you want? You're dissing us on social media, we don't like it. What can we do to make you happy? Honestly, it opens up a lot of doors. So anyway, people come on these tours, they come in its transformation. They all of a sudden are immersed in a topic that matters worldwide, and it's very satisfying. And I think people that do that, have that experience, they'll search for it. If they don't return on a tour with us, with me personally, or with my colleagues, they'll search for similar somewhere else. Because they've touched the magic waters. They know what it is now to be pertinent, to actually go to a place and have a voice and to see what's really going on.
Love it. We only have about 8 minutes. I mean, it's gone like crazy. I have a few really important questions that I want to ask as we begin to wrap it up slowly. But first of all, I mean, what transformations are you still experiencing now that you're going back there so often? I mean, do you still, what kind of transformations are you getting? Yeah,
it's a great question. Right now, so people think we're in the middle of a pandemic, and if we were a caterpillar before, I look at it like we're in this transformation stage right now. We're metamorphosing, and which is amazing. The scene behind you at Burning Man is a metamorphosis theme from last year. Yep. And so in the real world, there's a metamorphosis going on. And at the end, we're going to be butterflies, perhaps, right? So, I think we were about to, the caterpillar is almost going to be crushed, and luckily maybe pandemic is making us all slow down, and there's a transformation happening right now to the next stage. What's interesting, when I go back every year, some years for years, I'm excited to go back. We have certain projects to do. It's a certainty what we're going to try to accomplish. I have to say, the last couple of years, the previous year, I was so distraught by what I saw in Sumatra and Borneo. I just really want to throw in the towel and say it's not even, no, I even try, because they've so much global corporate world has gone in and made palm oil out of all this incredible elephant and orangutan habitat. Right. Hundreds of miles, just palm oil plantations, one after another. So I drove through a part of Sumatra I had never been, and I was in disbelief. This is where the elephants had been up until about four years ago, and there's nothing but palm oil. Anyway, I came from that so discouraged. It's like, oh my God, why even try? Right. It took me weeks after that. I had to go. I was with my friends, in my yoga community, and I was renourished, and I kind of got strength again to say, okay, we're going to go do it again. So these are challenges. It's really challenging always to be on the front lines, and I get emotional about it when a person, it becomes personal when I see elephants suffering and seeing what I have seen in the front lines. So so you see the good and the bad, but there's a lot of things that are so discouraging. So the question is like, when I go back, I have to look at with a fresh perspective every time. I have to go back with some goal, something in mind, right, where it'll make a difference, and it can become more difficult all the time. Often, people come on the tours like yourself say, reinvigorate me. You'll have fresh energy and say, oh, I can't wait to see XYZ, and I'll say, I can't wait to show it to you, and I see things through other eyes, right? And that's in my person. That's what I kind of do anyway, because I'm of service. I live of service, and at the Burning Man, how we met, I'm the founder of a very popular Burning Man camp. I Love Elephants theme camp at Burning Man. I love elephants, and the idea is just to love elephants. So I purposely create a dynamic space with the most positive people in the world that I can find. And as you know, my lineup of people that join our camp are quite beautiful, really. So these people, we do like 35 workshops during the course of the week, yoga, meditation, ecstatic dance, and it's all positive, uplifting. Yep. I love elephants, and I don't talk about how many elephants died that year or human-elephant conflict. It's all about why I do what I do, which I love elephants. And I express to the world why elephants are so awesome. And elephants are awesome. And our world is awesome. Animals are awesome. Nature is awesome. Humans are awesome. So, right? So it depends on how we frame the work we do. So how I frame what I do is I'm so discouraged so often, right? By the end of the season, I'm so discouraged. Then I go back into the festival world, back in my yoga world, in my festival world, in the Burning Man. I'm bringing all these people together and say, let's celebrate together. Let's celebrate elephants, right? So it's all celebration. Then I can go back, I find other like-minded souls that come with this positive, and we go and do the work again. So this is and what I find is each person that comes to the camp, like I stay at our camp, I won't even go out adventuring around Burning Man very much anymore, because my art is our camp. Every person in our camp, they go out and have their experience, transformative experience at Burning Man, come back to camp, and I see them. I see their transformation from day 1 to day 7 or day 9 or day 15, because it's a 2-week thing for us. And I watch their transformation, and it's so amazing. And that's what I've always loved, from being a Grand Canyon guide to being a guide in Sri Lanka or in India, to see, the witness how people are impacted by what they see and where I guide them. And the person they come out the end, I am so privileged to have that role.
It's one of the coolest things, and I totally have to agree with you. And what a gift and blessing that you're for all of us. And I think that's one of the main reasons I was so, enamored and attracted to you and your camp and everything else of what it represented, because just that vibe is there. And there's nothing more beautiful than us becoming that best version of ourselves, and it's expanding, and it can only happen, as you said. I mean, if you look at the world in a positive way, and I wish we'd had a lot more time to talk, but I think I'm looking I have 2 minutes, so I want to share a couple of things. First of all, watching your movie is just breathtaking, it's just beautiful, and what struck me so much is that these elephants, these large creatures, but they're so loving and they're so affectionate, and it's just a beautiful thing to see how connected they are. And you would never think that, because most of us just see elephants as single entities, but not as beautiful, harmonious communities that are very touchy and feely. And so I just want to wrap up by saying things that you and I talk about. What you say is really important is that there's only us here to take care of things. Nobody else is going to do it. And so it's our obligation to help people like Philip go on his tours, get educated, get the experience, share this experience with others, and all of us begin to take our own responsibility, our own small role. And as you mentioned, everybody can have a role, whether you're an accountant or a doctor or a lawyer, whatever that is. All of us can have a role. We don't have to fight politicians. I mean, we can do it in our own backyard. That was my experience when I came back from Sri Lanka with my humanitarian trip. As Rita says, look, guys, I was able to go there, do some humanitarian work, but we can do things here too, and that's why I'm giving these presentations as well. And so I really want to thank you for today, Philip. It's just incredibly insightful. I can't wait till, the travel ban is gone, we can start traveling, and I'm going to definitely join you on all your trips, or as many as I can, actually. So once again, how do people find you? Because I really want to make sure that people find you, and I really hope your movie comes out really soon.
Great. Yeah. So elephantsnow.org. So elephantsnow, all one word, .org. And again, I'm Philip Price, and you can send a private message through from our contact button on elephantsnow.org, or go to Facebook and you can find me there. I'm the director there, and so anything is submitted through our Facebook page will come to me, so it'll filter through me. But that's the best way. elephantsnow.org.
Awesome. Hey, Philip, thank you so much. Bless you. My heart to you, and can't wait to more conversations. Connect, Burning Man, Sumatra, Sri Lanka, wherever that is. God bless, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you for having me. It's been a joy.
Thank you.
Take care. Okay.
It's time for Dr. Rademaker's prescription for transformation. Let's tap into your own authentic genius and live the life you desire.
You are now listening to
Join Dr.